Hello artists, welcome to your Grinch painting class. In front of you, you should have your canvas with a sketch on it, a paper towel, a cup of water, a large brush and a small brush. For your colors, you should have your light blue, your bright green, your red, your black, and your white. You do not need to pour your colors out on a plate or a wax paper because we won't be mixing any colors. I just poured mine out so you can see them a little bit better. If you do not have all of those materials, not a problem. Push pause on the video and come back whenever you're ready. All right, the first thing we're all gonna do is dip both of our brushes in the cup of water and stir them around and get your brushes nice and clean. So go ahead and wash your two brushes. Once you are done, go ahead and dry your two brushes onto your paper towel. We never want to go straight from water to painting on our canvases, so just go ahead and pat them onto your paper towel. Always be aware of wet colors in this painting. So if your color looks wet and shiny, just know if another color is on top of it or next to it, they might mix or blend. And if you don't want them to, just give your paint a couple minutes to dry when it's not shiny and you can build on top or next to it. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is we are gonna paint his hand green. I'm gonna outline with my small brush and fill in with my big brush. So small brush, bright green. And you don't have to go on top of the pencil line. Later on we'll go on top of it with the bright green. But for now, you can get close and inside that shape. Nice long smooth lines. And this will just kind of let me know where to stop with my green. Nice long smooth lines. Don't go inside that kind of paisley shape. Just stick on the outside of it. Keep dragging that brush. Also with this painting, we'll be doing a couple of coats on, I think, almost all of the colors. That means we paint it once, let it dry, and go back and give it 2, maybe even 3 coats, so it's a little bit more solid. Especially with cartoony characters, you want to have nice solid colors where you don't see the background as much. So you don't want to see any of that white canvas peeking through behind his hand. And just a little bit of green, not too much. Then once you're done outlining, you can wash and dry your brush and then go ahead and start painting inside of the hand. And truly, if you need to go back to your small brush, you can go back to your small brush. And as you can see, you'll probably need 2, maybe 3 coats of this light green. Be sure to give your canvas a couple minutes to dry, your green a couple minutes to dry. Otherwise, that wet paint will still just kind of keep moving. So you want to build on top rather than moving that wet paint. It's kind of moving more in an up and down motion. Later on, we'll go in there and outline in black. Again, you can do 2, maybe 3 coats. While you're waiting, you can put your big brush aside and go back to your small brush. Go back to just a little bit of green. Maybe even pat some off on your paper towel. The word stank, S-T-A-N-K, is also in that bright green. So you can go ahead and go over it. Go over all those letters. If you still see the pencil line, there's a couple ways you can cover those pencil lines up. The first way is giving it 2 to 3 coats and just having the coats cover up the pencil line. The second way is whiting out some of the pencil lines. So let's say after I'm done going over my letters, nice long lines, I don't want to push too hard. I don't want to get too thick with my letters, but just a little bit. And I can let it dry and then go back over and just kind of sweep some white where I see more of a pencil. Let that white dry and then go over the white with the bright green. So probably 3 coats to cover it up, or you can let it dry after the first coat, sweep some white to white it out, and then go over it with a second or third coat with that bright green. Again, nice long lines. You don't want to see any bumps. And going over the letters one by one. And don't push too hard, because the harder you push, the thicker the line becomes. So you don't want to have those letters kind of smudge one into the next. And if you accidentally did, not a problem. Later on at the end, we'll use our white paint to clean up our letters as well, but that'll be later on. So I'm done with my small brush. For now, again, I can wait for that part to dry and then go back and do 2 or 3 coats on it. This is a little bit more dry now. Okay, go over it and do a second coat. Okay, I'm just kind of moving my big brush up and down motion. I think I'll definitely do a third coat for a little bit more coverage, and I'll get rid of those streaky lines too. So just kind of hold on for your green and go back to it. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and wash and dry my 2 brushes. And while I'm waiting for my green to dry even more, I'm gonna go in there and paint my mask blue in this area. It's okay if you go over these 3 pencil lines just a little bit, but be sure not to completely lose them. So same old, kind of like how I did with the green. I'm gonna outline the shape so I keep my nice clean lines, and then I'll fill it in with my larger brush. And then again, 2, maybe 3 coats with that light blue. So light blue, small brush. I'm gonna go underneath this area right here. So right underneath that kind of strap area. I'll stay inside of the mask. Put it to the side. Even though this painting is super basic, there's no blending, there is no super complicated shapes that are not already drawn onto your canvas. It's more about having a nice, clean painting, nice, solid colors, making sure none of your paint is bumpy. You want to keep everything nice and smooth. Going back and doing 2 or 3 coats. And if you are still working on a step and I have moved on, you are always, again, welcome to push pause on the video. Take your time. I think I'll let that dry for a couple minutes. I can go back to my second, third coat in just a bit. So in real time, wait a couple minutes and then go back over it. And if you can still see a lot of that white peeking through, go back for your third coat. Be sure everything looks nice and smooth and you're just kind of painting in one direction. And then you can go ahead and wash and dry your 3 brushes. Excuse me, your 2 brushes. Be sure all of that paint is off. So you can just kind of take your paper towel and wipe all the way around. Get all that green off. Because the next thing we're going to be jumping into is our red paint. So I'm going to use my small red brush. I'll dip it into the red paint, so I don't want too much on there, just a little bit. And this part of the Santa suit, so not where the white's gonna be, I'm gonna start off to the right of it and just kind of follow that wave right underneath. And we did curve ours over, so you can curve the line over to the sides, kind of diagonal and down. And then once you're done, you can put that small brush aside and then jump to your larger brush and paint inside that space, including the right side, all red. Again, one up and down motion, definitely 2 to 3 coats. Give it a couple of minutes for each layer to dry before you do the next coat. And go between these 2 lines. Like so. And while I'm waiting for this to dry, the words stink and stunk are in red. So I can use my small brush and start going over them. So small brush, red paint. Be aware of any wet paint. You don't want to smudge your hand into it. So I will go over the S, go over the T, and then same idea. If you can still see the pencil mark, do a couple coats to cover it up, or you can use a whiting out method. You can paint it once, let it dry with the red paint, then sweep some white on top of the pencil, so you can just kind of white out the pencil. And then once that white is dry, you can go over it with red paint again. So you're just pretty much whiting out the pencil mark. And then down here, same thing, this area is red. This aside, I'll go back and paint this area red again. Once I was done, I can go back to my letters, do another coat. If it still looks shiny, give your paint a little bit longer to dry, maybe a couple more minutes. There's that second coat for the red letters. There we go. So before I move on to black or white, What I think I'm going to do is just kind of go back and touch up the some of the colors. I'm sure you'll probably be doing the same thing if you see a lot of streakiness. And then in a couple minutes, I will go into my black and white with you. And again, be sure your brushes are really nice and clean. Be sure to even like wrap them around with your paper towel so you don't have any colors surrounding your brushes at all. You want nice clean brushes. Now that I know that my green is probably the driest, because that's where I started, I can go in there with my big brush. I don't want my paint to drip. I want it on there nicely. And then I'm just going to go over my green a third time. And be aware of any wet colors, so you don't want to make have it touch any of that red. And of course it's far away from the light blue, but you don't want it to touch any of that light blue. And with each coat, you're just going to get more and more solid. Usually I'm not as picky as this, except for if I'm doing a cartoon character. I want nice solid colors, and I don't want it to look blendy. It's all about making sure to cover that canvas with one solid color. Nice and smooth. Right down. Not too much on there. Truly, if you want, you can go back and give it a fourth coat. Just make sure everything is nice and dry. No rush. You can always pause the tape, or excuse me, the video as well. There you go. And then I can jump back to my small brush and go over a stink word again. Be very careful. My third coat covered my pencil mark, you know, a good 95%. But again, if you feel like this third coat did not do the job, or if you are putting some white on there, go for it. Just be sure your letters look nice and smooth. Nice long lines. And if the letters got too thick, later on we'll go in there with our white paint to kind of thin them out, which happens. I can go ahead and wash and dry these brushes unless you are going back again. I'm pretty picky, so I would probably go back in a couple minutes and do one more coat. All right, the next thing we painted was our blue mask. So be sure your big brush is so clean, no green on it at all. And go back and do another coat of that light blue. Again, be sure there's not too much on your brush. If it's dripping, that means you have too much on there. So again, in an up and down motion, get into that center area. Avoid those two thin strips. And I would probably go up there and do one more coat after a couple minutes of this light blue. Perfect. And last but not least, we'll go back to our red. So we did green, our light blue, and red, and we're going back in that order just so we give them all some extra time to dry, and we'll loop back around to those colors. If you want, you can loop back around one more time. Give them another coat. If they're having a really hard time drying at this point, if you have a hair dryer in the house somewhere, in your home somewhere, you are welcome to use that hair dryer. Just be sure not to get too close to your paint. It'll start cracking. So you can kind of stay a little bit further up. And then again, my next go around with my small brush and my red paint, I'll go over those letters. Right. And then again, be extra careful to get all that red out because we are gonna jump to white. You can even switch your water at this time if you feel like it got too muddy. Once you are done going back and giving enough coats to your colors, you're welcome to change your water and really wash and dry your brushes. And you can hug your brushes with your paper towel by wrapping them all the way around, getting them nice and clean. All right, so I'm gonna start off with white before I go into any of the black. I'm gonna start with my small brush and a little bit of white paint. So small brush and white paint. I'm gonna go into this area right here above the mask and into this area underneath the mask. It's okay if you touch the pencil line. Just be very careful if your blue is still wet. Go down here. Line right there. So 2 lines, one up top, one on the bottom. If you want, you can do another coat. If your pencil mark gets into the white, you can always just kind of sweep that pencil mark out and just wipe it off on your paper towel. Also, the kind of fluffy area of the coat is going to be white. Be careful of any blue or any red paint. I'm just going to go in there with my small brush. You can outline and fill in or just do your best to kind of stay in that area. It's going to sweeping some white. Be very careful if any of the any of the red or green look shiny and wet. Just going to use my small brush. Doing some sweeping movements too. Fill up that space nicely. There's also this area that kind of folds to the left, so get into that little triangle-ish space. With your small brush, you can also go into this space right here between the fingers. If your letters are nice and dry, you can get close to them, and you can even use your small brush. My red was definitely still wet, so you can use your small brush to kind of get into around those letters. But if you feel like they're still wet, go ahead and start working on your 4 sides. And you're using white paint, and make sure your big brush is nice and clean. So if your colors are still wet, maybe just kind of start working on your 4 sides. Mine were definitely still wet, so I'm going to give it some time to dry. This is just kind of cleaning up your canvas. It's going to make it look a little bit brighter. And then be sure on the sleeve to go up underneath the red and above the red. And the top part you can also paint white. All right. While I'm still kind of waiting, because I'm still kind of nervous about how what those letters are, I can start painting over here to the right, pretty much all that background space. If you want, you can use your small brush to kind of outline around some of those bigger areas that we just painted. Or just carefully take your big brush and fill in all that background space with white. Make sure it looks nice and smooth. You're painting in an up and down direction. Just gonna clean up our background really nicely. Anytime I get close to anything, I just kind of drag my brush. So it helps keep that nice clean line. And truly, after the end of this white background, if you want to go back and do another coat, now's your time on any of those items, or any of those areas, excuse me. In just a moment, I'll show you how to start kind of painting closer to your letters. I just used my small brush because I'm getting into those smaller areas. I want to clean up my letters, so I can use the white to kind of white out any edges that look a little off. So the 4 sides are done. I painted white below and above the sleeve, the top part, yes. And whenever you're ready, you can just put your big brush aside with your white paint, and you can use your small brush with a little bit of white. You're just kind of going in there and doing some maintenance. Just kind of using your small brush and dragging it to get in there and clean out the outsides. You can go between your letters too. If you accidentally smudge a wet area, just let it dry and then you can go back to it and just kind of white it out. And I just used my small brush, and I'm using my white paint, and I'm going to clean the letters. I can thin out some of the lines and make them look a little bit more straight by dragging my brush next to them. Making sure they're all separated and none of the letters kind of run into each other. That area right there was still wet. I think my red area is still a little wet. See if I can get to this side. This is a little bit more dry. If you went too much over your letters, you can always go back over them after the white's a little bit more dry. I feel like I did accidentally go over some of my letters. And once you're done, again, you can go back and make sure everything looks nice and clean. You can always smooth out any area of white that looks kind of bumpy. You can go back to your green or red and go back over your letters if you accidentally whited it out. But go back and forth. Make sure your letters look nice and clean. Take your time. Again, this is kind of like a mini painting, but sometimes these can be a little bit harder because you just want them to be perfect. I might even go back to that green. And if you want, you can truly choose if you want your letters to be a little bit rounded at the ends or a little bit straight at the ends. So if you want them to be a little bit more straight, you can just kind of create a little straight line and go in. If you want them to be a little bit more curvy, you can push down a little, just make sure they're a little bit rounded at the ends. Whichever one you prefer. All right, and in just a moment, I'll go over all the areas that need black paint. And you'll just be using your small brush and black paint for that last step. And take your time with your lettering again. You can kind of go back and forth as you need. Go back and give this red another coat. All right, and I think I'm ready for my black paint and my small brush. Make sure it's nice and clean. And then I'm gonna just dip into the black paint. I'll start with my 2020, and I'm just gonna go over it. In nice long lines. You want to go back and make it a bit thicker or clean it up, you absolutely can. Again, you can go back to this and add white around it once it's dry. And then you have those two kind of straps. 1, 2. Be sure nothing around it is wet. And then you have this U shape. I'm going to keep it going from one side to the next. And then on the left side, just outline it. On the right side. And remember, the harder you push on your brush, the thicker the line becomes. Then I'm gonna go above this white area, go underneath it. I'll attach them on the sides, and I'll do the same thing to the other one. I'll go from one end to the next, from here to here, and I'll attach the ends. There's those 3 lines in the middle. The one on the left is a little bit kind of bent. One in this middle is pretty straight. I'm just going to sweep at the bottom. This one's kind of like a funkier shape. You want to come down and out and then back in. The bends going up and out going to show where the mask actually folds, so that's why they have those lines. And be sure this area is nice and dry, but you are gonna outline the bottom part over the pencil, over here too. You don't want to see any white between the red and the black paint. Up here too, I'm gonna over. Perfect. And then once you are done, you can outline the hand, and we'll add fur to it in just a moment. Definitely be on the tippy toes of your small brush on this one. I'm just gonna outline it regularly, but then once I'm done, I can go back and add those little furry areas. Just want that basic shape that the pencil was in first, and then we'll go in there and add some fur. I just feel like I have a hard push whenever I teach the videos, but usually it's a little bit lighter with my lines. All right, once you are done, again, take your time. You are going to be creating like the little fur, little fuzz going off of his hand. And a lot of times you just have to think about which direction the fur is going, kind of like a pet or your dog or your cat. Which way does the fur go is kind of like how you have to think about the Grinch's hand. And also you're going to be doing a lot of sweeping where you flick at the end of the brush stroke, so you get those thinner ends, and just have a little bit of black on your brush. So if you wanted to watch first and then just kind of jump in, but it's absolutely up to you. So small brush black paint, I'll tap some off on my paper towel. And I am just gonna sweep up. You can even come up on top of the green here or there. And then just a little bit, maybe just pat some more off. You don't wanna have too much water on your brush. So be sure you have patted it off on your paper towel. after you'd washed it. Kind of coming off. And then they're going to be facing down a little bit more this way because the hand is coming down. Even had a little bit of fur coming down this way, this way. I'm continuing to go down with the furry areas. And over here where the bend of the fingers, I do just kind of have a little bent sweep. And on top of the fingers here, I just go back and add some more sweeps. Put more sweeps on the top. And again, if your fur got too thick, you can go back in there with white once it's a little bit more dry. So if you came on the outside of it and it got too much, you can always go back. And down here, I do have some little sweeps coming face down. Over here, I'm gonna go with the flow of the finger. I'm just gonna sweep down, like almost like a Christmas tree. To the left of this loop right here, sweep down. Go out. I can start sweeping down. Over here, more down sweeps to the right. And come in a little bit here and there. Some sweeps. And come over here with some sweeps as well. And with this part of the arm, I did sweep up, so I'm going to make just some sweepy movements. You could go in there, it's absolutely optional, add a little bit of sweeps here and there. But again, it's up to you. You can go back and forth between the green, the black, and the white, just kind of depending on what you wanted to do. Otherwise, your amazing Grinch painting is all done. That is so fun. I hope you had a great time as well, and I wish you a happy holiday.